If heaven had not birthed me, Liu Ryan, the world would have remained shrouded in eternal night. Ryan reminds you to connect to Wi-Fi, prepare some chips, and toss a free flower or two. My father was gravely ill, hospitalized, requiring urgent fees. Yet I couldn't reach my wife, no matter what I tried. I could only watch helplessly as a deduction alert swept away every last penny from my account. Meanwhile, my subordinate, Li Lichi, was proudly flaunting his limited edition motorcycle on his social feed. Baby said she'd spend others' money to take care of me. And she truly lived up to her word. In an instant, I recognized the slender, delicate hand wearing a wedding ring. It was my wife's. My hand slipped, and I accidentally gave the post a like. Her call came through immediately. Was it such a big deal that I spent a bit of your money? Is it really worth making a scene over? If you're so poor, why did you even get married? Facing my father's cold, lifeless body. This time, I truly decided to leave her. But she sobbed, begging me not to go. I scrambled desperately, piecing together the surgical fees. But it was already too late for the optimal treatment. My father still passed away. I handled the funeral arrangements all on my own. Meanwhile, Li Lichi and my wife, Liu Ryan, were live streaming together. They rode the limited edition motorcycle, speeding along mountain roads. Her hands clung tightly around his waist, her face beaming sweetly at the camera. It had been so long since my wife had smiled like that. Not with me. She used to smile at me like that. The comment section was filled with envious voices, calling them a match made in heaven. I tried to ignore it, but the scenes unfolding before me still pierced and deeply wounded my heart. If they were soulmates destined by the heavens, then what did that make me her lawful husband? They're a TM. Or just a clueless fool kept in the dark. After all, Liu Ryan was willing to spend my father's life-saving money just to fulfill Li Lichi's hobbies. But she wasn't willing to make me a simple bowl of noodles when I came home. 5 years of marriage, 7 years of being together, and none of it could compare to a single word from her new lover. I sent Liu Ryan a message. Let's get divorced. Several hours later, Liu Ryan finally called me. Her voice was cold, as if I were nothing more than a stranger of no significance. So what if I spent some of your money? Did you really have to make such a fuss? For a moment, I was at a loss for words. In our marriage, it always seemed like the turmoil was all about Liu Ryan. She knew very well how much I loved her, so she could be as capricious as she pleased in front of me, without a shred of restraint or consideration, because she was certain I would unconditionally tolerate her, always take her side, and never choose to leave. But this time, I didn't want to bow my head anymore. Standing by the window, I gazed at the overcast sky outside. A heavy sense of powerlessness filled my heart. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my trembling voice. Only then did I slowly speak. My father missed the best time for surgery because we didn't have the money. He has already passed away. You don't need to fake disappearing or pretending you couldn't be found anymore. Everything between us, it should end now. There was a silence on the other end of the line. After a moment, Liu Ryan let out a disdainful laugh. Can't you come up with a more convincing excuse to lie? Aren't you afraid of cursing your dad to death? Just yesterday, he called me, inviting us both to come back home for a meal. And today you're saying he's gone. How convenient. Before her words even finished, my tears were already uncontrollable. I remembered the final moment. My father lying weakly on the hospital bed, gripping my hand tightly. With a faint voice, he asked me, "Why hasn't Ryan come yet? Did you upset her again? You must take care of each other and stop fighting in the future." I held his hand tightly, feeling his breath gradually weaken. Tears blurred my vision. I didn't know how to answer him. I could only keep nodding. Seeing me nod, he finally closed his eyes in peace, still with a faint smile on his lips. I bit down hard, trying my best to make my voice sound steady. "My father," He really has passed away. He always liked you very much. I hope you can come to see him off one last time. If you have the time." On the other end of the line, Liu Ryan fell silent for a moment, but soon, her voice returned to that bone-chilling indifference. "Even if what you said is true, so what?" She spoke coldly, each word cutting through my heart like an icy blade. "Your father's death has nothing to do with me. I married you, but not to suffer alongside you." A surge of anger and disappointment welled up in my chest. How could she say such heartless words so easily? "Liu Ryan," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm tired. I don't want to continue like this anymore. Our marriage, it has reached its end." Without giving her any chance to respond, I hung up the phone, leaning weakly against the wall. I felt as though every ounce of strength had been drained from my body. I closed my eyes, letting the tears fall silently. My first meeting with Liu Ryan was in a beautiful and touched rainforest. At the time, she was one of my father's most prized students. And my father, he was a renowned explorer, celebrated far and wide. His footsteps had ventured into every corner of the world. As a reckless youth, driven by arrogance and ambition, I wanted to prove myself to him. I ventured alone into an uncharted rainforest, a place untouched by development or civilization. But misfortune struck quickly. I fell into an unfathomably deep pit, surrounded by endless darkness. The shadow of death loomed overhead. Yet before death could claim me, a softer god intervened. It was Liu Ryan who found me. Liu Ryan found me. In my dazed state, I saw her eyes. In that moment, it felt like an eternity. When I awoke from unconsciousness, I immediately began pursuing her passionately. Yes, I was relentless in my efforts. With my father's eager support, we quickly fell in love. It felt as if we were made for each other. 2 years of dating later, we decided to walk into the sacred halls of marriage together. I thought we would love each other like this forever, until our black hair turned to white. But a year ago, everything changed. "Mr. Boder, this is your father's urn. The deceased has passed on. Please accept my condolences." The voice of the staff broke through my spiraling thoughts of the past. I slowly stood up, my hands trembling uncontrollably, and accepted the urn holding the last remains of my father. He was the last family I had in this world. When I returned home, I was surprised to find Liu Ryan there. Liu Ryan had quit her job last year, and since then, she hadn't come home before 10 o'clock. Yet today, for once, she was home before 10. As I walked in, my presence catching her eye, her brows furrowed. "Why are you back so late today? And dressed all in black? Still mad, are you?" I stood at the door, my expression calm, like a still, lifeless pool of water, devoid of any ripples or emotion. "I'm not mad," I replied. She clearly didn't believe my words. Impatiently, she tossed her bag aside, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Didn't you already call me? And you call that not mad?" I didn't want to argue with her any further. I was about to hand her the death notice for my father, but she beat me to it, handing me a box instead. "Li Lichi sent this for you. He's just a kid at heart. When he heard you were upset, he insisted on sending you something as an apology." I opened the box. Inside was a razor, but it was clearly used, its casing already faded and worn. "Take it," she said casually. "Li Lichi just started working. He can't afford much. But even this razor cost a few hundred." I gave a bitter smile. Just moments ago, Li Lichi had posted on his social media, bragging about a new limited edition watch he received. It's just a small watch, he had written. My sister bought it for me in full. Her love for me, I want the whole world to know. When I refused to accept the razor, Liu Ryan's displeasure was evident. "What now? What's wrong with you this time? You're over 30 years old, and yet you're making things difficult for a naive kid. Is that fun for you?" I stood there, A storm of emotions swirling in my heart. Finally, they condensed into a cold laugh, with a hint of self-mockery in my voice. Using my money to support another man. Is that fun for you? Liu Ryan's face flushed crimson. If it weren't for you and your father forcing me to quit my job back then, would I even need to spend your money? Everything I'm doing now is because you forced me to. She angrily hurled the box containing the razor straight at me. It struck my head squarely, producing a sharp sound upon impact. Pain radiated from my forehead, and it was clear that a swollen red mark had already appeared. I didn't want to argue with Liu Ryan anymore. Every word exchanged only deepened my exhaustion and helplessness. I turned around, ready to head back to my room to rest, trying to escape this endless cycle of arguments. But Liu Ryan's voice called out once more. Motionless as if issuing a command. Boda! I packed the leftover pork and preserved egg porridge for you from dinner. You can have it. Her tone was condescending, as if I were a stray dog in need of her charity. I had never liked savory porridge. When we first started dating, Liu Ryan excitedly dragged me to try it. I forced myself to take a sip, but I couldn't stand the strange taste. In the end, I couldn't help but spit it out. From that moment on, whether we ate out or cooked at home, we never had savory porridge again, even though Liu Ryan liked it. In just a single year, so much had changed. If that incident hadn't happened back then, would things between us still have turned out this way? I took a deep breath, choosing not to reply. I silently walked into the bedroom and closed the door behind me. I sent a consultation message to a renowned divorce lawyer in the industry. Exhausted, I collapsed onto the bed. My thoughts were a tangled mess, impossible to straighten out. A year ago, Liu Ryan suffered a tragic accident during an expedition. She slipped and fell off a cliff. Fortunately, she miraculously survived. And fortunately, our 1-month-old child didn't make it. And it was unlikely we'd ever have children again. Liu Ryan knew nothing about any of this. She had always yearned to be a mother. Since we got married, she had been actively preparing for pregnancy, dreaming of the day our child would arrive. I knew if she found out the child was gone, it would break her heart and fill her with guilt. So I chose to keep it a secret. The doctor had sternly warned us that Liu Ryan's body was no longer fit for such dangerous work. He recommended that she give up expeditions altogether. So, after consulting with my father, we persuaded her to quit her adventurous career. But after resigning, her personality underwent a dramatic shift. She became cold and distant, even began indulging herself, immersing in nightlife, and mingling with those so-called friends of hers. Lying on the bed, I felt an overwhelming sense of numbness. I glanced at the time. It was already 3 a.m. I got up to pour myself a glass of water. As expected, Liu Ryan was no longer at home. I picked up my phone. I saw that Liu Ryan had sent me several messages. Lilichi is so amazing, isn't he? Youth really is wonderful. I like him so much. If only he were my husband. There was also a photo. In it, a woman dressed in seductive lace lingerie was leaning into a man's arms, taking a selfie. Lilichi's hand rested possessively on Liu Ryan's waist, radiating ownership. I replied with a single line, wishing you both a lifetime of happiness and many children to come. I then forwarded the photo to the divorce lawyer, marking it as evidence of infidelity. I had no intention of engaging with her further, but on her end, she panicked first. She retracted the previous messages and sent me an apologetic, cute cat sticker. Sorry, brother Boater. I accidentally used Ryan's phone to take a selfie and meant to send it to myself, but I mistakenly sent it to you instead. She was so exhausted. She just fell asleep. It's all my fault for being careless. Please don't blame her. As expected, just the antics of a clueless little brat. How childish. Lilichi thought I would react as I had in the past, breaking down at the sight of their intimate photo, rushing over in anger, dragging Liu Ryan away, and making everyone upset. But this time, whether it was intentional or not, I truly couldn't care less anymore. Suddenly, a wave of intense dizziness hit me. My vision blurred, and the entire world seemed to spin. I hadn't had a single drop of water today, too busy rushing to organize my father's funeral. Every second passed in a whirlwind of busyness and grief. I struggled to get up, cold sweat already covering my forehead. In my rush, I grabbed my phone, trying to call for help, but accidentally dialed Liu Ryan instead. The cold, mechanical beep on the other end told me she didn't answer. I laughed bitterly at myself, surprised to feel a faint, inexplicable hope still lingering in my heart. Shaking my head, I tried to clear my thoughts. Then I dialed the hospital's emergency line. Soon enough, an ambulance took me to the hospital. After a series of examinations, the diagnosis was acute gastroenteritis. I sat weakly in a wheelchair, my face as pale as a sheet of paper, completely drained of any color, alone in the hospital's room. I unexpectedly ran into Liu Ryan and Li Liqi. They were walking hand in hand, their faces glowing with happiness, like a pair of love-struck teenagers. When Liu Ryan saw me, her smile froze instantly. She noticed me sitting in the wheelchair, but her first words weren't of concern. Instead, they were laced with obvious irritation. "Are you following us?" Her tone was unmistakably annoyed. "Do I look like someone in this condition? Who could possibly follow you?" Only then did Liu Ryan realize I was receiving an IV drip. Her expression faltered slightly, as if she felt a twinge of unease. "What's wrong with you?" she asked. But before I could reply, Li Liqi rushed over to me. "It's all my fault," he blurted out. "Brother Boater, I just got the motorcycle that Sister Ryan bought me yesterday. I was so excited, but I caught a chill last night and had no choice but to call Sister Ryan for help. She rushed over to drive me to the hospital. Please don't blame her." Liu Ryan quickly pulled Li Liqi into her arms, looking at me with an impatient expression. "Li Liqi, you don't need to explain to him. He has no right to control me." I couldn't be bothered to watch their performance any longer. I just wanted to leave. But unexpectedly, Li Liqi suddenly knelt before me. "Brother Boater, it's all my fault. Please don't blame Ryan. If you must blame someone, blame me." His voice was dripping with fake concern. I didn't want to respond. Liu Ryan quickly helped Li Liqi up, throwing a reproachful glance at me. "Did you hear that? Li Liqi cares about you so much, and yet you keep stirring up trouble for no reason." Seeing the love in Liu Ryan's eyes as she looked at Li Liqi, I made a move that no one could have expected. In front of everyone, I grabbed both her hand and Li Liqi's hand, placing them together. Like a matchmaker officiating a union, I smiled politely and said, "I wish you both a lifetime of happiness together, and don't bother sending me an invitation to your wedding. I have some matters to attend to today, so I'll take my leave." Liu Ryan stared at me, her expression dark and heavy. At first, she seemed unable to believe it. Then she fixed her gaze firmly on my pale face. She let out an utterly disdainful laugh. "Boda, are you done yet? Stop being so ridiculously jealous. Li Liqi is sick right now. How can you be so petty, while I'm still patient? Hurry up and apologize to Li Liqi, otherwise we'll just get divorced." The last time she brought up divorce, it was because we argued. I accused her of neglecting the household, of always being out and partying. When Liu Ryan coldly mentioned divorce then, I felt an unprecedented panic. I knelt at her feet, tears blurring my vision. I slapped myself repeatedly, swearing oaths to her, promising I would never question her again, never upset her again, never try to control her again. Back then, I pitied her. I humbled myself to the lowest point, just to save our marriage. But in this moment, my heart was eerily calm. Looking into her eyes, I firmly said, fine. Liu Ryan, let's get divorced. The empty hospital corridor, for a solid minute, felt so silent it was as if time had frozen. Liu Ryan seemed to doubt her own ears. Her eyes locked onto mine, her voice rising by an octave. Boda, do you know what you're saying? I looked back at her with a steady gaze, my tone unwavering. Yes, I know, Liu Ryan. Let's get divorced. Liu Ryan clenched her teeth, clearly struggling to contain her anger. Don't play these manipulative games with me. I'm not falling for your tricks. I'll ask you one last time. Are you really going to divorce me? I looked straight into her eyes and firmly said, I'm sure. Hearing my answer, she was enraged. She stepped forward, grabbing my shoulders tightly. Why? I let out a cold laugh, my voice laced with mockery and anger. Why? You tell me why. My father died because you transferred the money. Money meant to save his life, to buy a gift for Lilichi, delaying his surgery at the critical moment. She let out a derisive laugh, her eyes filled with contempt. Can you stop lying already? I didn't say another word. I simply pulled my father's death certificate out of my jacket and threw it in her face. She picked up the paper, examined it carefully, then tossed it aside without hesitation. So what if I spend some of your money? Your father's death has nothing to do with me. If your father died, it's because you're incompetent. It's your fault. I let out a bitter laugh, my voice carrying a tone of finality and release. Yes, you're right, it's all my fault. My biggest mistake was marrying you. With that, I didn't spare her another glance and turned to leave. By the time the IV drip was done, it was already noon. I felt utterly drained, as if every bit of life had been sucked out of me. And yet, what was more exhausted than my body was my heart. When I got home, I caught sight of the urn placed prominently in the center of the living room. A sharp pain pierced through my heart. My father's figure appeared vividly in my mind. In my memories, he was always stern. Yet in front of Liu Ryan, he would always wear a warm smile. That was his gentlest side. Ryan is my most outstanding student, he often said, his voice brimming with pride and joy. Thinking of this, a wave of sorrow surged through my heart. Before I could even lie down to rest, my phone rang. Boda, I've heard about your father's passing. The deceased is gone, but the living must look forward. It was a call from Calais, my father's longtime friend. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. The gesture was more for my own affirmation. From now on, I needed to live for myself. There's a spot on the expedition team for Antarctica. It was your father's dream. Before he could finish, I hastily interrupted him. I'll do it. Going to Antarctica was always my father's dream. He used to say it was Earth's last pure land. He wanted so much to set foot there himself. Now that he's gone, I will carry his dream with me and see the world on his behalf. I didn't expect you to agree so quickly. Have you discussed this with your wife? Will she approve? Doesn't she hate it when you go on expeditions? His words lingered in the air as if invoking Liu Ryan's disapproving face. When does the expedition to Antarctica depart? In about a month. Alright, I replied. I'll depart on time in a month. 1 month? That would be enough time to resolve my marriage with Liu Ryan. After ending the call, I couldn't contain my excitement. I wanted to talk to my father, but I couldn't find the urn I had left in the living room yesterday. Panicking, I checked the home surveillance footage. The only people entering and leaving today were Liu Ryan and Lilichi. My heart raced with anxiety. I quickly dialed Liu Ryan's number, but all I got was endless busy tones. I kept redialing, but no one answered. Meanwhile, Lilichi's social media kept updating. Caught a bit of a chill. Feeling under the weather. Thankfully, Sister Ryan is taking such great care of me. She even personally made white porridge for me today. Some people will never have the privilege of eating her cooking in their lifetime. I feel so lucky. A sick day like this. Yet I'm experiencing royal treatment. With a beauty by my side, how blissful can life get? The photo he posted showed a steaming bowl of porridge, with Liu Ryan's gentle smile beside it. It was as if she was telling the world how fortunate and loved he was. I couldn't help but remember a month ago, when I caught a fever from a cold. I was up all night, my head pounding. We were out of painkillers, so I gently nudged Liu Ryan awake, just hoping she could pour me a glass of warm water. Liu Ryan opened her eyes, her gaze filled with anger. She didn't say a word, not one. She got up coldly and walked toward the kitchen. I hoped for a glass of warm water that could bring some comfort. However, I could have never imagined she would fill a cup to the brim with boiling water and mercilessly pour it over my hand. Are you freaking kidding me? Don't you know I have a temper when woken up? Did I marry you to suffer? The searing heat penetrated my skin instantly, bringing an unbearable pain. I couldn't hold back a cry of shock. Drink it! Didn't you want hot water? Well, are you still going to drink it? Her voice carried not a shred of care or sympathy, only cold indifference and anger. Even now, my hand bears the ugly scars of that burn. In that moment, I felt not just the pain on my hand, but an icy chill in my heart. Back then, I foolishly apologized to her, convinced it was my fault, that I shouldn't have disturbed her sleep. Love or the absence of it is so obvious. I had already lost completely. I gave so much for this marriage, and this was what I got in return. And now she's taken my father's urn. That was the ultimate violation of my last boundary. A mixture of rage and anxiety surged within me. I could no longer stay calm. Without hesitation, I grabbed my car keys and headed straight for Li Lichi's house. His home wasn't far, but every second of the journey felt agonizingly long. With relentless knocking at his door, from inside the house, Liu Ryan's curses grew louder as she approached the door. When she saw my face, her brows instantly furrowed. Boda, what the hell is wrong with you? Why are you banging on the door so loudly? Li Lichi just fell asleep, and you woke him up. He's sick. He needs rest. I stood at the doorway, anger burning in my chest. This morning, I was alone at the hospital, and she didn't say a single word of concern. Yet for Li Lichi, who only had a mild cold, she was frantic with worrying. But my father's urn was still in their hands, so I had to suppress all my emotions. Almost pleading, I asked her, "Do you have my father's urn? Please give it back to me. Are you done yet? It's just a stupid box. Did you really need to come here and make a scene over it?" Her voice was sharp and cold, her expression full of disdain, as if I were the one being unreasonable. At that moment, Li Lichi's voice came from inside the house. "Ryan, where do you think this box looks best? This black, ugly thing doesn't seem to fit anywhere." His voice was strong and full of energy, not at all like someone who was supposed to be sick. The fury in my heart could no longer be contained. I shoved Liu Ryan aside and stormed into the house. I strode quickly toward Li Lichi, determined to confront him. In his hands, he was holding my father's urn. I grabbed it from him in one swift motion, but my heart sank to the depths inside. The ashes were gone. Liu Ryan chased after me, raising her hand ready to slap me. "Boda, how dare you push me?" But this time, I didn't silently endure it like before. I grabbed her wrist firmly, stopping her hand from touching me. "Liu Ryan, where are my father's ashes?" My voice was cold, laced with uncontrollable fury. Her face changed at my action, and she contemptuously pointed at the trash can nearby. "Garbage belongs in the garbage can." Seeing the cruel expression on her face, I could no longer control my emotions. I slapped her hard across the face. Then I rushed to the trash can, frantically searching for my father's ashes. Liu Ryan furiously pushed me to the ground, screaming, "How dare you hit me? Everything I am now is because of you and your father. If you hadn't forced me to quit my job back then, I wouldn't have turned out like this. Don't think I don't know. You both made me quit, just to pave the way for someone else. Your father replaced me with my junior, and I know he only did it because he got some benefit from her." Watching her almost hysterical state, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of irony. I pulled out a piece of paper I had kept with me and handed it to her. "Read it carefully for yourself," I said coldly. Her gaze fell to the paper, and when she saw the bold black letters printed on it, her expression froze. Her face instantly turned ashen, as if all the blood had been drained from it. "Boda, what is this?" Her voice trembled slightly, carrying a hint of uncertainty and fear. Liu Ryan picked up the notice that had fallen to the ground, her eyes fixated on every word, as if searching desperately for a glimmer of hope. Hearing the commotion, Li Liqi rushed over, trying to hold Liu Ryan. "Brother Boder, are you fighting with Sister Ryan again? Please don't argue because of me. It's all my fault. If anyone's to blame, blame me." However, Liu Ryan's emotions were now beyond anyone's comfort. She shoved Li Liqi away harshly. He stumbled backward, falling to the ground. Li Liqi's face showed hurt and grievance. In the past, if Liu Ryan saw that expression, she would immediately rush to comfort him. But now, no one paid him any attention. Liu Ryan's fingers gripped tightly, holding the miscarriage surgery notice. Her voice cold as ice, she asked, "When did this happen?" "The day you fell off the cliff," I replied. "The baby had just turned 1 month old." She froze in place, her voice trembling slightly. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want you to feel guilty. You always wanted a child, our child. Finally, we had one and then we lost it. You would have blamed yourself endlessly. And I didn't want you to break under the weight of it all. You might never be able to have children again. The doctor warned you not to engage in such high-risk work anymore. That's why my father and I persuaded you to quit." Liu Ryan's face turned pale instantly. Her eyes widened, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "What? That's impossible. I don't believe it. Are you lying to me?" "Yes, you're lying to me." Her voice grew sharper, until she was almost screaming. But as she saw the mocking look in my eyes, and the undeniable words on the paper, she clutched her head, her face full of disbelief. She kept murmuring to herself, "No, this isn't possible. It's not possible. This can't be true." At that moment, Li Liqi suddenly rushed over. He grabbed Liu Ryan's arm tightly, his voice filled with grievance. "Sister, my head suddenly hurts a lot." But Liu Ryan didn't react the way she usually would, anxiously checking on him. Instead, she brushed him off impatiently, her voice void of the usual gentleness and concern, replaced with coldness and irritation. "If your head hurts, go see a doctor. Why are you coming to me?" Li Liqi seemed stunned by her uncharacteristic attitude, frozen in place. His expression shifted from pain to shock. He stood there, dumbfounded, watching this absurd scene unfold. I felt no emotion anymore. I only wanted to find my father's ashes and leave this place. Suddenly, Liu Ryan knelt down beside me. She rummaged through the trash can and pulled out a bag. Inside it were my father's ashes. "Boda, here are Dad's ashes. I'm sorry, it's all my fault. Let's go home together now, okay?" Before she could finish her sentence, Li Liqi's voice cut in, laced with pity and unease. "Sister, are you abandoning me now?" Before I could respond, Liu Ryan, like a beast provoked, suddenly stood up, her hand landing a harsh slap across Li Liqi's face. The sound was loud and decisive, as if all her anger erupted in that single moment. "It's all your fault for ruining my relationship with Boder. You despicable wretch." Li Liqi staggered from the blow, falling to the ground, He clutched his face, looking at Liu Ryan in disbelief. Sister, you weren't saying that last night. Last night, you were praising me the entire time. Hearing his words, Liu Ryan's face twisted with even more fury. Before he could finish, she slapped him again without hesitation. Shut up. It was you despicable rat, who seduced me. Boda, you have to believe me. Watching this farce unfold, the disgust in my heart only grew stronger. Impatiently, I cut Liu Ryan off, giving her a disdainful glance. There was no trace of love left in my gaze. Only deep, uncheckable contempt. Your performance is impressive, but I'm no longer interested. Your matters are no longer my concern. I've already consulted a lawyer and drawn up the divorce agreement. You'll receive it soon. Each of my words struck her like a slap across the face. She stood frozen in place, clearly caught off guard by my declaration. Everything between us is over. Leaving her with those final words, I turned around, picked up my father's ashes, and walked away without looking back. I spent the evening discussing the divorce agreement in detail with my lawyer. By the time I returned home, it was already midnight. Unlocking the door, I was surprised to find the house in darkness, except for a row of candles laid out on the floor, stretching from the living room to the bedroom. Through the slightly ajar bedroom door, a warm, amber glow spilled out. A sense of unease stirred within me, as I stood there, puzzled. The bedroom door opened. Liu Ryan appeared, draped in a white lace robe, her figure faintly visible beneath it. Her delicate, beautiful face flushed with a faint blush. Her voice, soft and honey-sweet, dripped with allure. Honey! Anniversary surprise. Do you like it? Only then did it hit me today was our 5th wedding anniversary. But I had already brought up divorce earlier today. What was she trying to do now? Perhaps Liu Ryan thought her sudden gesture would move me. But all I felt was calm indifference. What are you doing here? I asked coolly. My tone carried no trace of emotion. Her deep eyes held a glimmer of hope, but I merely looked at her indifferently. Why are you here? What do you want? I asked again. She shook her head, her voice low, laced with a hint of pleading. Honey, I'm sorry. I'm apologizing to you. You should let go of your anger now. She reached out, trying to touch me, but I skillfully avoided her. I miss you. Let's not fight anymore from now on. I didn't understand where her confidence came from. All I felt was a wave of irritation. I handed her the freshly printed divorce agreement. This is the last time I'll say it. We're divorced. Don't bother me anymore. Sign the agreement as soon as possible. I don't want to see you again. Leave. Liu Ryan refused to give up. She lowered herself, admitting her mistakes. I really know I was wrong. I swear. I'll never make the same mistake again. I've already deleted all of Li Lichi's contact information. From now on, I won't see him ever again. Boda, please give me another chance, okay? I sighed lightly, speaking calmly. But some things, once they happen, can never go back to the way they were. A shattered mirror can't be pieced together again. Liu Ryan, we're not right for each other. She looked as though she'd just heard the biggest joke of her life. Not right for each other? Boda, you once told me yourself that we were a match made in heaven. The corner of my lips curled into a mocking smile. Did I really say that? At our wedding, you also promised that you would always be loyal to me. Did you keep that promise? Her question silenced her for a moment, her face showing a hint of guilt. She reached out, trying once again to pull me into her arms, as if an embrace could undo all her wrongs. But my body reacted faster. I broke free from her arms immediately, taking a step back, creating distance between us. Liu Ryan, it's not about whether Li Lichi is in your life or not. What matters is, I find you disgusting. My eyes no longer held any affection, only deep contempt and disappointment. Time had passed. The passion and promises of the past were shattered by the harshness of reality. Boda, are you still angry with me? Stop being childish, will you? I know I was wrong about everything before. Look, I even cooked this entire meal for you today. I glanced over. It was a table full of dishes Liu Ryan loved, because she liked them. I used to like them too, but now I no longer loved her. These are all your favorites, I said. But mine? You never knew. You've always loved only yourself. How can you say I didn't love you? Boda, I've always loved you, she said, her eyes brimming with tears, trying desperately to prove her feelings. I let out a bitter laugh, one filled with self-mockery and sorrow. You wanted to be a strong, independent woman, and I became your supportive partner. I organized your life perfectly. When you quit your job, I worked even harder, just so your quality of life wouldn't decline. I loved you, so I was willing to do all that. But you say you love me. What did you actually do for me? Loving someone is simple. Sharing joy in happy moments, comforting each other in sadness, eating meals together, joking and laughing together. For so many years, I sacrificed my own happiness to fulfill everything you wanted, just because I loved you. But in the end, I gave my love to the wrong person. Soon I'm heading to Antarctica to fulfill my father's dream. And from that point onward, the sky will be vast, the road long, and we'll each go our own way in peace. Liu Ryan reached out to grab my arm, her voice trembling slightly. Boda, don't leave. We can. But I wouldn't let myself be moved anymore. For so many years, I had compromised too much of myself. I walked out the door into the night, feeling a sense of relief about the past. This marriage, this relationship, let it drift away with the night breeze. Let it go with the wind. Suddenly, I felt like having a drink. But I realized there wasn't anyone I could share a drink with. After dating Liu Ryan, my entire life had revolved around her. At the cost of completely forgetting myself, I found a bottle of liquor, raised it to my lips, and without hesitation, drank it down. The liquid burned as it slid down my throat, igniting a fiery sensation within me. It was like a flame blazing fiercely. The burning sensation spread from my throat deep into my heart, and with it, my heart ached as well. One bottle after another, I mechanically repeated the motions: opening, raising, drinking, until the alcohol blurred my senses. I had no idea how much I drank. Empty bottles lay scattered all around, symbolizing my farewell to the past. From that day onward, Liu Ryan persistently began sharing snippets of her life with me. Honey, did you know vegetables are so expensive now? How did you make those meals so delicious before? Why can't I recreate the same taste? Honey, why is there so much housework? It's so hard. How did you manage to keep everything in such perfect order before? Even though I didn't reply to a single message, she kept sending them, one after the other, tirelessly. But delayed affection is as worthless as weeds. In the past, Liu Ryan always demanded I respond to her messages instantly, promising to be at her beck and call. Once, during an important work meeting, I had my phone on silent mode. In the middle of the meeting, I saw a series of messages from Liu Ryan. Her tone was full of blame and dissatisfaction. Why aren't you replying? Where are you? What are you so busy with? Why are you ignoring me? Panicked, I quickly replied to her, explaining that I was in a meeting and promised to call her as soon as it ended. But her reply was cold and brief. However, when I needed her, Liu Ryan always turned a blind eye. Once, I fell ill. I was burning with fever, lying in bed, completely weak, without the strength to even get up and pour a glass of water. I sent her a message. Wife, I have a fever. Can you come back home? I hoped she would come to see me, even if just to show some care and comfort. I'm very busy right now. You're not a child anymore. Don't bother me. At that moment, I felt an overwhelming loneliness and helplessness. I realized that In her world, I seemed to always come last. My needs and feelings were constantly ignored. If only she had awakened earlier, perhaps things might have turned out differently. But life doesn't have ifs, only consequences and results. In the end, Liu Ryan signed the divorce papers. After signing, she made one last request: to meet with me once more, to put a definitive end to this relationship. I didn't go to see her. A month later, I packed my bags and set off on a journey to Antarctica. On this distant, white continent, I buried my father's ashes in this pure land, fulfilling his unfinished dream and finding a resting place for my own past. When I returned to the mainland, half a year had passed. I suddenly received a phone call. An emergency room doctor told me Li Liqi had an argument with Liu Ryan while riding his motorcycle. They got into an accident. The injuries were severe. Before entering the operating room, she wanted to say a few words to me. Afraid that I would reject her call if she used her own phone, she asked the doctor to call me instead. I told the doctor, "She has the wrong number. I don't know this person." Later, a mutual acquaintance informed me that Li Liqi narrowly survived the accident. After the motorcycle accident, he barely clung to life. Left lasting effects. Some of his bodily functions were impaired. As for Liu Ryan, her legs were severely injured, and she would spend the rest of her life in a wheelchair. After enduring a series of hardships, the two hastily registered their marriage. But their life together was far from happy. They frequently quarreled over trivial matters. Liu Ryan was dissatisfied with Li Liqi, who always ignored her and went out to have fun. Li Liqi, on the other hand, resented her for being old and not earning any money. During one of their arguments, an intense fight broke out between the two. Liu Ryan suddenly lost control. She grabbed a kitchen knife and stabbed Li Liqi several times. Then she drank a bottle of pesticide she had long prepared. Just like that. In a tragic and violent manner. They ended their lives. But none of this had anything to do with me anymore. Those people and events that were once so intertwined with my life now felt like distant memories. To me, they were as remote as a past life. The Antarctic ice fields and Arctic auroras would witness my new journey. All the love, hate, and entanglements of the past would gradually fade away with my steps, becoming farther and farther. They would turn into mere dust in the corridors of memory.